Hello and welcome back to the channel. I wanted to do a quick video today because tomorrow is Thanksgiving for my American viewers who actually make up 50% of my audience, which also means we're only a month away from Christmas and New Year, when many of us will be expected to spend more time than usual with family members. And I know that for many people, like me, setting boundaries, especially with family members, can be extremely challenging. So in today's topic, I'm discussing setting boundaries. Although this video coincides with the holidays, you can use this information anytime you need to set a boundary, and not just with family members. The techniques that I'm going to describe will work equally well with friends, bosses, and co-workers. I'm Jo Banks. I've been a professional executive coach for almost 15 years, and I'm sharing what I know. Before I get into the detail of today's topic, I would be so incredibly grateful if you could just take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because it really does make such a massive difference to helping me build this channel. So I really appreciate it if you do that. I'll be completely honest with you, boundary setting has always been an issue for me. I had an extremely challenging childhood, which I will cover more in upcoming videos because I really want to be transparent. I think it's really important for you to understand that I haven't had the easiest of lives. So much of what I share in my videos, books, training, and coaching is from learned experience, not from textbooks. I grew up in a household with an incredibly strict, authoritarian mother where there were no such things as boundaries, and the ability to say no was absolutely impossible. My mum had access to every part of my life, which she saw as her right as my mother. Nothing was off limits for her. There was no way I could disagree with her. No way of saying no or setting boundaries. I didn't even realise that was wrong until well into adulthood. As a result, I grew up with strong people-pleasing tendencies as a way of keeping the peace in a chaotic household. Now, I do realise that my experience is extreme. However, if you're watching this, I'm guessing that there's probably some people-pleasing tendencies in there too. After all, people-pleasing starts with parent-pleasing. So why do we struggle with setting boundaries? Well, it can be difficult for various reasons, often rooted in emotional, societal, or cultural factors. So here are some of the key reasons why many of us find it challenging. Number one, fear of conflict. We may fear that setting boundaries will lead to conflict, rejection, damage to our relationship, or even abandonment. In my previous video, number 33, why it feels so bad when you're excluded or left out, I discussed the evolutionary and psychological effects of exclusion. The pain of exclusion shows up in the same brain regions as physical pain. So it's entirely normal to want to avoid confrontation and sacrifice our own well-being. Number two, guilt and obligation. Feelings of guilt and a sense of obligation can make it hard to say no or establish personal limits. We may prioritize the needs and desires of others over our own, leading to exhaustion and resentment. That's the people-pleasing. Number three, fear of losing connection. We value our relationships and may fear that setting boundaries could distance us from our loved ones. We worry that asserting our needs may be perceived as selfish or uncaring. Number four, lack of assertiveness skills. Many of us struggle with assertiveness and find it difficult to express our needs and desires clearly and confidently. This can hinder the establishment of healthy boundaries. Our roles within the family dynamics are often established during childhood. If you, like me, find it difficult to set boundaries, it might be due to your upbringing as a caretaker within your family. People pleasing, as I've already said, starts with parent pleasing. Alternatively, again, like me, you may not have witnessed boundary setting within the home, and so you just literally don't know how to do it. However, it's never too late. It is a skill that you can learn and implement from where you are right now. Breaking free from these outdated patterns can be challenging, but nevertheless, the individuals with whom you seek to set boundaries are adults. They are fully capable of taking care of themselves. They have just grown accustomed to the role you play and will allow you to play it for as long as you allow it. So let's take a look at the 4 main boundary types and how to set them. Number 1, emotional boundaries to protect your emotional well-being. Emotional boundaries serve as the invisible yet protective measure that defines the limits and parameters of our emotional well-being and interactions. They're the protective barrier that we set to safeguard our feelings, needs, and mental health. These boundaries establish the space between ourselves and others, delineating where our emotions end and where others begin. They're a fundamental aspect of self-care, allowing us to maintain a healthy sense of self by honouring our emotions, preferences, and limitations. Establishing and maintaining emotional boundaries involves recognizing and communicating our feelings, asserting our needs, and respecting both our own and others' emotional autonomy. They foster healthier relationships, enabling us to connect authentically while preserving our individuality and emotional stability. The exercise. The first step in setting emotional boundaries is to get clear on what you will and will not accept. So, think about a person or people you want to set an emotional boundary with. Get clear on and list the types of things they're likely to say that you find uncomfortable or unacceptable or that trigger you. I recommend physically writing them down, preferably on paper using a journal or notepad. Some examples of emotional boundaries might be comments about your weight, your eating habits, your diet, veganism, vegetarianism, or you might be on a diet and they're trying to force you to eat something that you don't want to. Family plans, for example, when you're going to find a partner, when you're going to get married, have children. It could be gossiping or talking poorly about another family member or coworkers. Once you've got your list, write down how you want to respond next to each one. Here are some examples. I'm not comfortable talking about my weight or what I eat. I prefer not to talk about my relationships or plans for children. I appreciate that your way of showing love is to feed me, but my way of loving my body is to eat what it needs to be healthy. I'd rather we didn't talk poorly about another family member or colleagues when they're not here. Now let's take a look at number 2. Time boundaries to protect the use and misuse of your time. Time boundaries involve setting limits and priorities regarding how you allocate your time and energy. They're about recognizing the value of time and being intentional about commitments, responsibilities, and leisure time. These boundaries entail establishing a balance between personal and professional life, ensuring that time is dedicated not just to work, but also to self-care, relationships, hobbies, and relaxation. Setting time boundaries involves saying no to overcommitment, delegating tasks when necessary, and honouring your schedule and your commitments without feeling guilty. It's a way of respecting your time as a valuable resource and ensuring it's used effectively and in alignment with your personal goals and well-being. Let's look at the exercise. Again, write down where your family, boss, or co-workers may want more of your time than you're willing to give. Let's look at some typical examples for this one. One could be your family expecting you to stay an entire weekend when you were only intending to come for dinner. Expecting you to go for Christmas or Thanksgiving when you really don't want to this year. It could be a boss expecting you to be available 24 hours a day or expecting you to work late into the evening or weekends. Once you have your list, give some thought to how you will respond. For example, I can come, but I can only stay so many hours. We're going to do this first, then we'll come to you. Why don't you come to us this year? I can't work additional hours this weekend, but I can spare a couple of extra hours on Monday evening, if that's what you want to do. Now let's take a look at number 3, mental boundaries to protect your thoughts and your own value system, which can be different from your family's. Mental boundaries involve protecting the inner landscape of your thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions. They are the protective barriers that shield the mind from external influences that could negatively impact mental well-being. These boundaries encompass being mindful of the information and ideas you consume, limiting exposure to negative influences, and discerning what thoughts and beliefs are accepted or rejected. Mental boundaries also involve maintaining a healthy level of detachment from others' opinions and expectations, allowing for independent thinking and self-assurance. By establishing and respecting mental boundaries, you can cultivate a stronger sense of self, fostering mental clarity, resilience, and the ability to navigate challenges while staying true to your authentic self. One important point is that it's healthy to have differing thoughts and beliefs from others, even if they're your family. It's normal. Just because others don't agree does not mean that things have to descend into chaos. The exercise. Write down all the things that you can foresee will come up in your interactions. These will likely include politics, religion, ways of working, how you're raising your child or your children, even how to cook the turkey. Next to your list, write down your responses. Examples could include, you have the right to your opinion, I have the right to mine. You don't have to agree with me, but please speak to me in a respectful way. I don't like it when you tell me that your recipe is better than mine. Let's take a look now at number 4, physical boundaries to protect your physical space. Personal physical boundaries refer to your limits and autonomy regarding your body and physical space. These boundaries encompass comfort levels with physical touch, intimacy, and also personal space. They're about asserting control over your body and deciding what is acceptable or not in terms of physical interaction with others. This could involve setting boundaries around hugs, kisses, or any form of physical contact, respecting personal space and communicating preferences clearly to ensure that physical interactions align with your comfort and consent. Establishing and respecting personal physical boundaries is essential for feeling safe and respected and in control of your own body with various relationships and social interactions. Again, let's look at the exercise. Write down all of the things that you know could come up in your interactions that could violate your physical boundaries. These likely include people bringing their dog to your home or other guests that you don't want there, hugging and kissing when you don't want them to, people standing or sitting too close to you, or people who constantly touch you without your consent. Again, write down your responses should they do that behaviour. Some examples might include, please don't bring your dog, it's too much chaos for me to handle this year. I'd rather not hug or kiss you. I'd prefer it if you didn't touch me, please. Do you mind sitting or standing a little bit further away? One really important note that I'd like to make here. You should never force your kids to hug or kiss people when they don't want to, even if it's an aunt, uncle, or even a grandparent. It's vital for them to learn that their body is their own and that they have the right to protect it. Kids often sense when something is not quite right about someone, and we should not be forcing them to kiss or hug Uncle Steve when they really don't want to. So I think that's a really important point to make here. The wrap up. For the most part, you know how the people around you will behave and what they will say. So if you don't like it, you don't have to put up with it. We can't change what others say, but we can choose our reaction. So it's critical to think about what they'll say and how you're going to respond. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that we can't think straight when we're triggered. Our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's responsible for critical thinking, literally goes offline. So if you can preempt what will be said and practice mentally or mentally rehearse your responses, you're much more likely not to get triggered and feel more in control. I appreciate that if you're not used to it, setting boundaries can feel incredibly uncomfortable, even scary and unsafe at first. And it's important to point out that some people may be really upset if they're not used to it. They may even try manipulation tactics to bring you back in line. These typically look like passive-aggressive behaviours such as eye-rolling, tutting, sulking, ignoring you, or saying things like, "Oh, I'm such a bad mother." However, remind yourself it's their problem, not yours. Such behaviour is typically as a result of their perceived loss of control over you, usually deeply rooted in their own fear of abandonment. And actually, it has nothing to do with you whatsoever. One final point that I'd like to make on this topic, and one thing that I know for sure, is that people who have the most to lose by you setting boundaries are the ones that will be the most upset. Emotionally mature people do not have an issue with boundary setting. Finally, you are an adult, and it's your right not to put up with behaviours from others that jeopardise your physical and mental well-being, even if they're your family. What next? This topic came up in a comment that a viewer left in a previous video, and I really want to make sure that I'm giving you helpful information. So if there's a topic that you'd like me to cover, put it in the comments below, even if it's unrelated to what we're talking about here. I read and respond to all of the comments, so I'm definitely going to see it. I've got loads of exciting topics and interviews coming up in the very near future. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a thing. Finally, thank you to everyone who watches until the very end, and thanks for your continued support. It means the world to me.